How do you do? Won't you join us as we meet a world traveler in search of happiness, who finds little but trouble and tragedy? When all else fails, he turns to crime to feed his insatiable hunger, only to starve his spirit more. Hopeless and gasping for his last breath, his thirst was quenched and his spirit filled when his heart and mind and life were unshackled.
I never knew sunsets could look so friendly.
You're not getting soft on us, are you, Woodward?
Well, we just don't get them like this back home.
Well, you better stop your daydreaming, boy. We got company. Torpedo!
Bringing the good news that changes lives. This is Unshackled, dramatic true life stories produced in Chicago by Pacific Garden Mission. People who aren't very lovable probably need love more than anyone. And that's why Pacific Garden Mission reaches out to the addict and those who live from one handout to another. A handout won't change anyone's life, but the good news of God's love and forgiveness can make an eternal difference. So the mission provides food, fresh clothing, and medical care, all without charge, thanks to generous gifts of friends and listeners. As physical needs are met, counselors and pastors introduce the homeless to the one who can set them free of all bondage, like the man in this story. Now for broadcast around the earth, here is program number 3330 in the series Unshackled, the program that makes you face yourself and think.
I was born near Luray, Virginia in 1926 and grew up in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. My grandpa was like many who lived in the mountains. He left school after the 8th grade because they had to work so hard. Grandpa had natural engineering abilities and was commissioned to design the Skyland Drive in the Shenandoah National Park. Grandpa owned a small sawmill, and all the male members of the family worked there, including my cousins, my brothers, and me. Dad worked hard and long hours, causing a stroke, leaving him partially disabled.
Glenn, have you gathered all the vegetables for your mom and the girls to can?
Yes, Dad. James Hoover helped me.
I'm sorry that I can't do as much now as before my stroke. I know that you've missed days at school because you had to take on so much work here.
It's okay, Dad. I don't mind helping the family. Why was James given Hoover as his middle name?
Well, President Hoover's little White House is just a few miles from us. James was born on Election Day, and President Hoover won the election.
Grandpa must have liked Andrew Jackson, because that's what they named you.
You should give your children names of honorable people. The Bible tells us a lot about honoring people.
Well, I better finish my chores. There'll be lots of tourists out today. These were the years of the Great Depression. I worked every odd job I could find, and that included one unusual source of income. There was a series of gates on one of the local highways to prevent livestock from wandering. When I was 8 years old, I would open and close one of those gates on weekends during the summer. Tourists would laugh when they saw a little boy pushing such a heavy gate, and they tossed coins to me. A silver dollar! Thanks, mister! I scooped up as much as $25 a day during the peak of the tourist season. That was a huge sum during the Depression. I gave it all to my dad.
Despite his industrious nature, it wouldn't always seem so easy for the man in our story. Trouble was lurking ahead, and trouble would indeed find him. This is the true testimony of Glenn Woodward from the classic files of Unshackled.
As I grew older, I worked on an ice truck with another boy named Bill during the summer. The situation was kind of an unusual one at that time since Bill was black. We delivered big blocks of ice for old-fashioned ice boxes.
There's one good thing about this job, Glenn. No matter how hot it gets, You and me get to sit right here in the truck with the ice. Lots of folks would like to trade places with us.
Yeah, you're not the only one who's been thinking about this job, Billy. The ice keeps you cool as long as you're here under the canvas standing next to it. When we carry it out and go up a flight of stairs, we're hotter than anyone else.
I suppose you're right. How come Mr. Brown hired us to carry ice instead of a grown man?
I reckon we work cheaper. Plus, we're about the same size as Mr. Brown. He's the smallest man I've ever seen who wasn't a midget. But he can tell us what to do and make it stick.
We're as good as any man. Ain't that so? We can carry 150 pounds all the way upstairs and lift it into the icebox.
You said it. The two of us together are as good as any man. I was 15 years old in 1941, and I was ready for a change. I wanted to see the world and find work that wasn't so hard.
Glenn, we still need you here to help us.
Oh, he's just going to spend a few months with his cousin. He's never been anywhere before.
Dad, I'll be back.
You've changed, son. You've been spending too much time with some of the girls around here. I taught you to be respectable.
Oh, the trip might help him, Andy. Let him go.
With the help of my grandparents, Dad relented. I went to Sparrows Point, Maryland, and stayed with my cousin. He was an Army sergeant and was away for periods. His wife was beautiful, lonely, and only 21. She showed me around, but our relationship created friction, so my cousin asked me to move. The Bible says, "My son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother." I had left the teachings of the Bible in Virginia. I found a job at a box company, so I rented a room. My lifestyle changed radically as I frequented bars with older men and joined in their frivolity. One of those men took on the role of a father in my life and advised me to run from the lifestyle that was about to swallow me up. He advised me to join the Navy, so I did. A month after my 16th birthday, I enlisted in the Navy for 6 years. Signing up took some conniving because I needed my dad's signature, but he'd never do it. I convinced a buddy to forge Dad's signature, and I became a sailor in the United States Navy. 12 weeks of boot camp at Great Lakes was exciting in many ways, but following regulations was a difficult task. From there, I was sent to Lawrence, Kansas for machinist school at the University of Kansas. Soon I was reprimanded for becoming involved with a girl, so I was sent back to Great Lakes. Then I was assigned to the Commandos, which were training at a hotel with the Marine Corps at Long Beach, New York. There I was, drawn to illicit acts, and was ready for change. A buddy encouraged me to go AWOL with him.
I'm talking about going home, that's all.
That's all. Just take off from the Navy.
Sure. Wouldn't you like to go?
That sailor changed his mind, but I didn't. Proverbs 1:10 says, "My son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not." But I didn't know those biblical warnings. I caught the bus out of town and went to see friends and family. They persuaded me to return, so after 27 days I went back to camp. I was given a stiff sentence and loss of pay for 3 months. Then I was ordered to duty on the USS Beatty, a destroyer that was assigned to patrol the Mediterranean Sea. My assignment quickly became dangerous. We were operating as the flagship of a convoy on November 6th, 1943. It was late in the day, just about dusk. The Beatty had dropped astern and to the starboard side of the convoy to pick up and escort a freighter that had been refueling from a tanker. This reduced our speed to 9 knots an hour, which meant we were running on the low-power turbine. Just at that moment, the convoy was jumped by German Ju-88 attack bombers that were loaded with torpedoes.
Take cover! Quarters! Torpedo!
I was blown into the water and remained there for about 20 minutes, along with hundreds of other sailors. It was a catastrophe of historic proportions, during which 17 ships were decimated. My ship had to be abandoned. Sailors from the Beatty came along in a captain's gig looking for survivors.
Now reach up, mate. Let me get a hold of your hand and we'll haul you aboard.
Oh, am I glad to be rescued? A destroyer picked us up later that night and took us to Algiers. We were then transferred to a troop ship that took us to New York. I was reassigned to the USS Yosemite and then to Tampa, Florida. Then I got rheumatic fever and was bedridden for 6 months. This was the first time I did any praying. I heard about Jesus as a boy, but I definitely didn't know him. I thought God had a son who was killed, which made me feel sorry for him. I didn't know that Jesus came to die for my sins, as it says in the Bible. But God commendeth his love toward us, in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. I prayed to a vague God, and didn't think that he heard me. After my recovery, something very unusual happened.
Look at the sailors.
Oh, they're all over the place. You get used to them after you've been here a while.
Don't you think that sailor over there is kind of cute?
Maybe. I dare you to whistle at them.
You know I don't whistle at boys.
Oh, these aren't boys. They're sailors. Go on, I dare you. You afraid?
Of course not.
Well then, let me hear you whistle.
Fine.
Oh no! They turned around. Oh, they're coming straight toward us.
It was your idea, so it's your problem. You dared me after all, so you get rid of them.
The girl was named Pearl. She was visiting her aunt from Chicago. We liked each other, and I took her to a carnival that night.
Hey, you want me to guess the little lady's weight, sailor?
Go ahead.
Well, how about give me a little hint?
How could I? I just met her.
You know, I think we're getting to be quite a spectacle.
Oh, it's on good fun, young lady. Now, let's see. I'm going to say 108 pounds.
You lose.
Well, let's look at the scale. Hop on up.
All right.
Well, how about that? Little lady weighs 114. Oh, we've got a winner. Now, here's your prize. A genuine, original Rosie the Riveter doll.
Thank you.
Hey, now, step up, sailor. Let's see how much you weigh, huh?
We saw each other one more time. Then Pearl returned to Chicago while I went to San Francisco and then to Guam for almost 2 years. While there, I learned that my oldest sister had died on her 19th birthday in childbirth. I was devastated and really didn't know how to process the reality of her death. Where was she now, and what happens after death? Pearl and I wrote each other until I returned to San Francisco in May 1948. I had 106 days of leave and $4,000, which I didn't work to earn. Come on! Lucky 7, baby! Lucky 7! Yes! That's a winner! Woo! Riding a hot gambling streak, I was a big winner. I asked Pearl to spend a week with me in California. She came out even though her mother objected. Neither one of us was a Christian, but we kept our relationship strictly chaste. I visited her parents in Chicago and then went to Virginia to see my family. It was great to be home again. My tour of duty ended on July 22nd, 1948. Pearl and I married 6 weeks later and lived near her family in Chicago. Jobs were hard to find, and as I searched, Pearl became pregnant. A few months later, she had to be hospitalized twice, and medical treatments absorbed our money. Our son David was born 9 months after our marriage, but money was scarce. Then some guys I knew had a proposition that included me.
We'll hear about Glenn's proposition in just a moment. Now, though, here's Pacific Garden Mission's president, Phil Kwiatkowski.
Thanks, Timothy. Oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good. And we've experienced the truth of that scripture. We give thanks every day for his provision, for the volunteers who come to minister to the homeless, for the friends who send finances to keep the doors open day and night. that this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world through this program. We give thanks for every person